the single biggest determinant of success in the second half of your career is EQ. What you know is important. It's critical. Who you know, critical. But EQ is really what separates people that go on to eventually run divisions, run companies, start new businesses. I remember thinking, I know I can screw this up. I don't know I can do it right. And even if I do it right, nobody claps when the trains run on time. Gradually, I realized that no, that's like the building block of a workforce is the junior people. And by the way, there's no better way to create a great senior person than just the hard work in the early years. The single most important thing for people today, and I think this was true for time immemorial, is, as I look back on my 20-something year career at this point, you got to work hard. Like there's no silver bullet, there's no cheat code, there's no, you got to work hard.
And it's just that simple.
You got to put in the time. I love the concept of having a hole in your shoe because the truth is it is much more comfortable to not have a hole in your shoe and feel the ground and have wet socks. Those aren't comfortable things. But the truth is that there's no progress inhibitor in my mind that's greater than comfort. I would tell you, be goal oriented and ask yourself, not do I love what I'm doing this year or this hour or this minute, but am I doing things that, whether I like them or not, are putting me on the path to something I really will love doing? And I think that that's a hard answer, but it's the right answer. To stay focused, my lock screen on my phone has some data that Apple allows you to have 2 widgets,
right? And
it has a picture. And those things encompass the 5 Fs. But the reality is that what seems impossible is not at all impossible. You just have to be ready to do impossible things.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jewish Professionals Podcast, the JP Podcast. I'm Hillel Bainat.
And I'm Benjamin Winters, and we're students at Yeshiva University, just looking for some advice.
Our aim is to bring to you Jewish professionals from every industry to learn from their successes and failures, how they grew in their career and Jewish identity, and made a Kiddush Hashem along the way.
We hope you can apply what you learned through the lessons to your own life as they pass the torch to us, the next generation. We can't wait to go along this journey with you. This is the Jewish Professionals Podcast.
Woo! We're rolling. Welcome back, everybody, into the studio. Jewish Professionals Podcast, Season 2. A lot said we wouldn't make it here, but we did. Beautiful summer in New York City, Ben. Some hardworking people, but, we're back, and we're excited.
I've been waiting for this moment because literally as I walked out of school, everyone was asking me, when's the next season dropping? When's the next season dropping? When's the next season dropping? So I knew there was excitement in the air, and thank God we have no better way to start it off than with an unbelievable guest. Yoni Goodman is the founder and principal of Green Pine Real Estate, a New York-based commercial real estate investment firm. Prior to founding Green Pine, he served as the president of Meridian Capital Group, where he helped lead the firm's national expansion, strategic partnerships, and multiple acquisitions. Earlier in his career, Yoni was part of Goldman Sachs real estate investment banking group. He was at Credit Suisse, and he serves on many boards, corporate boards, nonprofits. We will get into that. I'll be honest right now, this could be 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. We got a lot to cover. This is going to be amazing. Yoni, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
You came in with some good style too,
Good style.
You had a nice striped
We've
shirt.
never seen a gray suit in the studio before, so this is definitely time number 1. We've had other fashionable guests, but nothing like the gray suit. I tried pulling one off. My mom said, "Don't worry, it doesn't look good on you."
I mean, listen, not everyone. You need a breadth of experience before you go gray. You got to keep the blue and the black. But Yoni, tell us a little bit just about growing up. Bring us all the way back, and tell us about your upbringing.
All the way back. All right.
Day one.
Well, we're sitting here in Washington Heights, so I'll just say until I was 12, my family actually lived in Washington Heights. And
Born native.
And we lived on the other side. But grew up in Washington Heights till I was 12. Always went to SAR. And finally, as one of the last families that were holding out in the Heights, my parents finally said, all right, let's pick up and move to Riverdale.
Do you want to, after the episode, just do a tour around memory lane and go see
exactly. I lived on the other side, but
okay,
but I've been here a lot.
Wow.
Had a lot of friends who went to YU. So 12 years old, moved to Riverdale, continued at SAR. You guys don't even, this is not on your radar, but at the time SAR had no high school. So when SAR kids reached the 8th grade, it was a question of, generally speaking, Ramaz, Frisch, TABC, a couple other options. So SAR through 8th grade, went to Frisch, went to Mevaseret for my year in Israel, went to Brandeis. So you tell me, where do you want to start?
And highly active in Mosheva as well, as we discussed.
Highly active in Mosheva. Started Mosheva in Ada Gimel. It's actually a little bit late.
Yeah.
And interestingly, at the time, I was the only SAR kid in Mosheva, which is
Nowadays,
It's
it's
crazy.
called Mosheva SAR. You have the Rebbeim from SAR who go and do chinuch there. You have all the kids who go, and you have Mosheva like seeping into SAR too. The ruach on.
So I guess we know who set the standard. Who started the trend.
Well, I was one of them. A couple of my classmates joined me later, but I was the only one from Riverdale at the time. So I went to Mosheva. I would say SAR, Mosheva, Frisch, these institutions definitely, I give all the credit for, my Jewish identity, care for Israel to my parents, of course, and to those institutions. Those institutions made massive marks.
I mean, these
especially
camps,
Mosheva IU.
Yeah, these camps are so effective, and it's beyond. It's like you said, it's beyond just fun. It's the Jewish identity. It's the friendships for life. They just really have a winning recipe, it seems like.
Yeah, well, I started in Ada Gimel, went all the way through the staff years. I met my wife at Mosheva.
Okay.
So that's kind of a big deal.
Points.
And we'll get into it later, but the summer between my junior and senior year of college, I had been a staff member for previous summers and had the opportunity to go back. For those who know Chana Spiegelman, she was starting to talk to me a little bit about, a role, maybe a Rosh Hashanah role, something like that.
Which, by the way, for the listeners, a Rosh Hashanah role is when you're a kid, you like look up to these people as like, my gosh,
you totally made it.
Yeah.
And that summer was, I ended up not doing that to take an internship at Credit Suisse, and career-wise, the rest is history. But actually, the summer before that was the summer I met my wife. So between sophomore year and junior year,
Okay.
I actually interned for the ADL, and we'll get into it. But I was a philosophy major at Brandeis.
Right. I was gonna.
Let's talk about that. What inspired you to study philosophy at Brandeis?
Yeah, so I would say everyone's different, right? And people ask, were you academically inclined? The way I would describe it is that I got to Brandeis, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. As a good Jewish boy, I was thinking about law school, this, that, but I really had no idea. And early on in my college time, I basically decided, this is great. Like, I'm in college, have a lot of friends here, a lot of free time. I'm going to enjoy myself. Take my coursework seriously, but not too seriously. Enjoy myself. And sort of in the later college years, I'll buckle down and figure out what I really want to do. And that's what I did. And so for the first couple of years, I took courses that interested me. Brandeis at the time, and I'm sure still has, great professors. Jonathan Sarna, one of the foremost historians in American Jewish history. Dennis Ross was a guest lecturer, and I took a course with him. There were all these like great things to learn about on campus. And so I did that. And it really wasn't until the later years where I started to think about, well, what do I want to do with my life? And I distinctly remember between sophomore and junior year, I was interning for the ADL. I was very communal minded. We'll get into this, but my parents are actually both teachers, and going back generations, pretty much everyone in my family was in academic fields, communal oriented fields. And for me, for a bunch of reasons, which we can get into, I started to feel very gravitated towards the world of business, the world of finance. When I was younger, I had a paper route in Riverdale. I was always, somewhat business-minded. But again, it would be a lie to say that at the beginning of college I had any focus whatsoever on Wall Street. Totally not. Wanted to have fun. I will now translate into, I developed a lot of very, very important skills that I didn't realize I was developing. We'll get into that. But sophomore, junior year, summer, interning for the ADL. Actually, for the second half of the summer, a student at Columbia at the time, a shout out to Shannon Meyerstein if he's listening, created a trip to Argentina. There was a big need in the Jewish community of Argentina at the time to come do volunteer work. So he created a trip of college kids to Argentina, and it was primarily Barnard, Columbia, and Brandeis students. And so interned for the ADL, went on that trip, spent a little time in Mosheva IO that summer too.
Very good, just making sure.
Yeah. And when we got to the airport for that Argentina trip, right when I got to the airport, I saw this girl who I had seen for years at camp, who maybe I'd spoken to, a couple times. And as staff members, I remember we hung out actually a lot the previous summer. And, I looked at it. I said, "Wow, you're on this trip. You're on this trip." And
Good pickup line.
yeah.
Where else would you be going?
Where else would she be going? Where else would she be going?
You're on the different group going to Argentina, the other.
You also going to Buenos Aires tonight? But the first night of the trip, we stayed up all night talking in the hotel lobby, and the rest is history. So that was
Right.
A different type of hotel lobby date.
Right.
a different type of hotel lobby day. Exactly.
Can we harp on that point about going back to the philosophy major? You're saying that you weren't even going to sort of like, I'm going to get my clear line of thinking down. I'm going to be able to reason better than everyone else, and I'm going to use those skills to then go onto Wall Street and dominate it in negotiation or whatever it is. You were just going there to learn, and you were just going there to be present. Nowadays, I feel like, at least in my experience, you have two camps. You have the people who are either slacking off in college and really just not even thinking career oriented, or you have the people who come in and they've already been networking and they've already been talking to so many people and they already have sort of the exact career trajectory they want to go on. You're saying there's a value to even just being there and not being in either camp.
So think about it like this. So you guys are in college. So why do Western elites, right? Elites in the Western world, what do they do with their children from 18 to 22? They send their kids to college.
Mm-hmm.
And where do the real Western elites send their kids to college? Ivies, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Penn, Cornell, Dartmouth, Brown. Then you get into the non-Ivies. But why do smart, educated, successful people in all fields, medical fields, academic fields, financial fields, why do they all send their kids to liberal arts colleges? Right? Why not vocational schools? Why doesn't every single one of them send their kid to Wharton to become a real estate finance concentration, or to, straight to medical school or other types of vocational schools? Are they all crazy? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you ever stop to wonder what is the value of a liberal arts? And the secret is, I think the reason why is that what do you do in a liberal arts education? You're not learning, it's not vocational skills. You're not learning Excel. You're not, learning how to be a plumber. You're not learning how to be an electrician. You're not learning how to be a doctor. You're learning how to communicate, right? But you're learning how to communicate. You're learning how to think. You're learning how to form relationships. And all those things which may seem like a bit of a boondoggle for 4 years, and think about it, the Western world does it for 4 years.
Right.
Like, can you imagine? I mean, tell an average Israeli that, right? They're in the army for 3 years. When they get out of the army, they're going to travel the world, and then they're focused on career. Here you have 4 years where you basically are telling kids, go to college. It'll be the first time you're away from home. A lot of free time, relatively little adult supervision. Take whatever courses you want. That's the prospect of a liberal arts education.
Right.
And I think it's...
and we're going to save up our whole lives so that you have these 4 years for this.
Right, so it's like, why?
Right.
And the answer is that those skills, those communication skills, interpersonal skills, network building skills, the judgment that you learn a little bit, right? Just having free time to not have to focus on, okay, how do I become a plumber? Those are, I would argue, and we'll get into it on this podcast, ultimately those are the skills that actually are the single most important skills.
Is that what people
to
mean
have a
when
successful career
Is that what people
of any type?
Is that what people mean when they talk about breadth of experience? Is it breadth of experience, or is breadth of experience more going out and experiencing the world?
You'd be surprised, even if I was at Goldman Sachs for 4 years. If you walk through Goldman and you were able to do some imaginary assessment of, forget your Excel skills, how well can you communicate? Mm-hmm. How well can you present to a credit committee? How well can you write an email? And not just a one-liner, but like a real email, right? You'd be surprised how scarce those skills are.
Right.
And so I think that the yesod, if you will, of a liberal arts education is that you learn those things. And so I didn't know any of this at the time. I didn't think this way at the time.
Right.
But in retrospect, the truth of the matter is, you sort of tried to pigeonhole, right? You're either super career-minded or not taking studies seriously at all. I would say I took my courses seriously, but I was not career-oriented at the beginning of college. And, the analytical thinking, which I left out, by the way, communication, analytical thinking is a huge component of what you pick up in a liberal arts education. And, I would say those skills, as well as just being a well-rounded individual, later we call it the airport test. When you're interviewing someone, it's like, okay, they know this, this, and this, but I want to be stuck at the airport with them for 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And I think that, is it important to be able to quote Shakespeare when you're stuck at the airport for 5 hours? Probably not. But if you're a one-dimensional person who knows every Excel shortcut and nothing else in your life,
Right.
are you interesting to be stuck in an
Right.
airport with?
Well, no one loves an airport more than you. I mean, that's where you make your wife, right?
And I would say even nowadays, that will only be enhanced and accelerated, these soft skills, because of how much AI can replace some of these more technical-based skills you're seeing right now. All this buzz about junior bankers being replaced, and this whole project that OpenAI is doing, that nowadays there should be more investment into that area of developing communication, negotiation, eye contact. Nowadays you see people, they can't make eye contact with people.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I think about successful people in the business world, and my wife's a physician, I'm sure this extends to her field and to most fields, but certainly I'll speak for the business world. To me, the single biggest determinant of success in the second half of your career is EQ. So what you know is important, it's critical. Who you know, critical. But EQ is really what separates,
Right.
right.
To you,
people that go on to eventually run divisions, run companies, start new businesses. I think EQ is essential.
What is EQ to you beyond just being socially aware and being socially savvy?
Communicating effectively. You could tell someone, you need to accomplish X, right? And to accomplish it, you need to ask a person to do something or compel them to do something. There are 1,000 routes to doing that, right? If you're sort of on one end of the spectrum, and I'm not referring to this,
Right. Right.
But if you're on one end of the spectrum, you might literally walk up to the person and say, hey, I'm going to need you to award us this loan opportunity, right? That's like a very literal, okay, I asked for it, right? On the opposite end of the spectrum, you might have a person that realizes that it's not about what you want. It's about showing the person that it's good for them, right? So other end of the EQ spectrum is like, let me develop a relationship with this person. Let me understand what makes this person tick. Let me understand how this person is thinking about this decision. What's their framework, right? And by the time that person's done, the person they need a favor from thinks that this person is doing them a favor, right?
Exactly.
So those, when it comes to how to sell, Mark Cuban talks a lot about selling. Like selling is the most essential skill in business, and I agree with him. And a lot of people think of selling as like, sell me this pen.
Right.
Selling can be recruiting. A heavy part of what I did over the last 10 years in my career was recruiting. And recruiting is just one big sales pitch, right? You sit down with somebody who has a burgeoning career, someone, right? If I'm recruiting them, it's obviously someone who I'm excited about recruiting, someone who's probably super successful or like clearly on their way up. And to sit with that person, you can walk up to the person and say, hey, I would like you to work for me, right? Or I would like you to come work for our company. But that's not the way it works. And you need to understand that person.
Right.
You need to understand how they think. You need to know their background. You need to understand, their values, their family life, their, all sorts of aspects of their personal life. And you need to make an assessment over fundamentally whether the move is good for them. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, and it's true for me, I can't sell anything I don't believe in. So if I conclude in a recruiting exercise that the move is fundamentally just not the right move for the person, not only do I not try to recruit them, or not only would I not try to convince them, I can't even convince myself, right? So I think all these things wrap up into EQ, and I'm not the world's foremost expert on EQ. For all I know, I have very low EQ, but the bottom line is that's certainly something I think is a huge determinant of success in the business world, and something I value when I interview candidates, especially sort of, not the very early analyst years, but anything after those early years and later.
Got it.
To me, that's a huge determinant of success.
Right.
So you're coming out of university, right? And you make this crucial decision. You're going to pass out a summer of fun, a summer of amazing memories to go work, right? And you end up staying at Credit Suisse for a while. Take us through that decision. Take us through your entire experience there.
So I'll tell you. So it was actually on that Argentina trip, there was one person on that trip that had just finished his summer at UBS. I think it was UBS. And when we were on the trip, I started asking him, like, what'd you do this summer? How was it? And that summer between sophomore and junior year is when I really did start to buckle down and say, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And I was studying for the LSATs, and I started, really paying attention to the next chapter of my life. And he started telling me about his summer. And he was in sales and trading. And he was telling me that He worked at this place called UBS. And there's no hyperbole when I tell you guys, I didn't know what investment bank was. I didn't know a thing about the finance world.
What is M&A?
I might have been able to tell you. I might not have been able to tell you.
Philosophical. Yeah.
Something in Aristotle, a
Yeah,
philosopher
exactly.
named them.
Exactly. And he started telling me about his summer. And I don't remember the particulars of what he said, but what really stuck out to me was the amount of responsibility he had, the extent to which the team actually took him seriously. And in retrospect, it might have been that they took him minimally seriously, but that minimally was a whole lot more than, you know, the summer jobs I was hearing from other people about, including paralegaling and, you know, all sorts of things. And I was like, whoa, you're telling me that you were actually like taken seriously, you were adopted onto a team, you had real tasks, you weren't just like ordering dinner, which he was ordering dinner, but not only ordering dinner, given real responsibility. He made good money that summer. And Wall Street, that was definitely the time where that seed was planted in my head. And I was like, okay, this Wall Street thing, which I know nothing about, sounds pretty awesome. Now,
Right.
I grew up in Riverdale after moving from the Heights. And, you know, for me, you might ask, like, so my parents were teachers.
Right.
Going back generations, everybody, rabbis.
That was my question,
teachers,
actually.
academics, is like, where did this bug come from? And I haven't, like, sat down to psychoanalyze this. I do think growing up in Riverdale was a big piece of the story. Riverdale is a very unique community. Riverdale has a lot of very affluent folks and a lot of very not affluent folks within the Jewish community there.
The same. They share the same.
We share.
Wow.
It's a function of the real estate. So there are, you know, apartments, including, you know, tiny non-doorman buildings, and then there are mega mansions. And I think because of the, you know, physical construct of the community and the real estate housing stock in the community, it just attracts a very diverse group of people, which was magical growing up. So when I think about, you know, where I live now in New Rochelle, there's definitely a lot more homogeneous, which is a bad thing. And I love New Rochelle, but, you know, Teaneck, most of the 5 towns, New Rochelle,
Right.
they're just fundamentally a little bit more, you know, homogeneous. Riverdale couldn't have been, I mean, you had academics, you had doctors, you had lawyers, you had business people, you had heads of private equity funds, you had CEOs of public companies. You had all those people, you know, davening in the same place, sending their kids to the same schools. And I think for me, you know, that juxtaposition just kind of emphasized a little bit, you know, what it, you know, sort of, you know.
Turned your eyes open, yeah, I see.
The shine caught my eye. Anyway, so when I started hearing about Wall Street, I was like, that sounds amazing. And I want to have that experience next summer. Now, here's the problem. When you haven't prepared at all for that, and
Right.
and those times weren't like today, where you need to like have a real estate finance internship in 2nd grade,
Right.
and then 3rd grade to
I
be able
think,
to build
yeah,
it in.
it's kindergarten this
Yeah,
year.
exactly.
You better get
You've
started
taken
now.
like 15 Excel courses by the time you're in 8th grade. So back then it wasn't like that, but it was still pretty much an impossibility. It's like, you know, you're a philosophy major, you haven't ever read the Wall Street Journal, you have no idea what M&A stands for, and you're sitting at the end of your summer between sophomore and junior year, and that next summer, the summer analyst summer between junior and senior, is like a huge summer to launch your career on Wall Street, because if you don't get a summer internship, your chances of getting a full-time offer during your senior year were much lower. So I basically got home from Argentina, most importantly, with a girlfriend,
There we go.
who is now
This was a
my wife.
successful trip. Holy cow.
But also with a seed that was planted, and I didn't realize how deeply it was planted, but it was planted deeply. When I got back to campus, I was a man on a mission. And I was probably the only, or one of the only philosophy majors that, and actually a couple of my suite mates who are friends to this day were in the same bucket. But it was, you know, I got back to camp and I was a man on a mission. I was basically like, okay, there's this thing called a summer analyst position available to me next summer, or to kids my age next summer. I'm going to get that. And I hardly knew what that was. But I started talking, and, you know, I would, just a big piece of advice to young people, and this will be a repeated theme on this podcast. What I love about career trajectory and life and these journeys is that there are no rules in terms of career trajectory and career journey.
Right.
What's better than that is 95% of people think that there are. So like if you talk to most people, especially most people today, it's like, if I want to become have success on Wall Street. What do I need to do? And they'll tell you need to do exactly this. And then before even your first day at Goldman Sachs, you need to be bidding yourself out to private equity funds. You need to secure the offer. Then you need to go to the buy side. And the reality is, that's all complete nonsense.
Right.
There are no rules when it comes to career trajectory.
Right. You could tell me if I haven't gone on any career trajectory yet, but there's a part of me that thinks that in some way a lot of people know that, and that's why it's so daunting, because they know how many possibilities there are.
Yeah,
and they're overwhelmed by the amount of things that they can do.
I think that's right. There's an infinite, if you look at today's your start point and your end point is whatever you want it to be. There's an infinite number of ways to get there, and that can be daunting. Anyway, so a big theme, when I talk to young people today is like, you can absolutely, I call it getting the answers to the test. So like life and career, it's a test, but it's an open book test. And it's a test with 1,000 different answers to every question. But you can get the answers to the test. You just have to talk to people. You have to ask the right questions, spend time with the right people. So when I got back to campus that year, I basically sought out anybody I knew, even peripherally, in senior year that had just finished their summer analyst summer. And I remember my roommate and one of my best friends, Alan Sternberg, shout out to Alan Sternberg, who ended up going on to Lehman Brothers. And then Angelo Gordon has had an amazing career.
And he'll come on this podcast soon.
There you go. He's an LA boy now. He was South African, guy from South Africa that was our roommate.
That's amazing.
Great guy. And I remember he had come to the same conclusion. He was like talking to people around campus. And I went to him and I said, who was helpful, who not. And what we basically did was we just went to them and said, tell us, I have a notebook, I have a pen, I'm here with it. Tell me every single question that you were asked in every single one of your super days. And don't forget any. Tell us every single one. And they did. So now we had the answer, to part of the test, which is what are they going to ask me on this super day, right? Get the answer to the test. And then we had to ask them, what did you answer? And what answers did you feel good about? And what answers did you not feel good about? What do you think they wanted to hear? What do you think they didn't want to hear? And again, wanted to hear is itself a subjective term, depends who your interviewer is.
Right.
But the point is we got a ton of context. And we went from, I certainly went from zero finance background, zero clue what an investment bank was, to within a month, it's like, I don't really know much about investment banks. I don't know about the different divisions. What does sales and trading do versus fixed income versus investment banking? But I know exactly what super day is. And I know what they're going to ask me, including I know what types of things they're going to want me to have done before. And it was a lot of that type of preparation. It's like, just get the answers to the test, right? And so I did a lot of that. And, at the time, it's not, everything's different than it is today. But at the time, don't show up to your super day if you haven't read the Wall Street Journal. Don't show up to your super day if you don't know where the S&P 500 is trading. Don't show up to the super day if you don't know X, Y, Z about it. And so I learned all that. But I also, heading into the actual process, I kind of knew, probably wouldn't have articulated this clearly myself at the time, but I kind of knew, my background was different than Penn, Wharton, real estate concentration students. Right?
Right.
So you can kind of try to fake it if you want, but you will fail. So I started to realize, okay, I need to embrace the difference. I also started to realize that, and this is a very valuable lesson, I think, for everybody. You have, if you have richness of experience, it could be that experience has nothing to do with finance, but a lot of experiences can be reframed, right? And so, I found on dusty on a shelf my 2005 Credit Suisse First Boston fixed income analyst class binder. And I looked at the resume, and whoever coached me to this was brilliant, which is at the time I had a big leadership position on campus, which was I was the president of the Orthodox community of campus called BOO, Brandeis Orthodox Organization. And I thought of it as what it was, which is we did programming for the Orthodox community. We made sure that there was Friday night davening, Shabbos davening, and Deilim Minyanim, and Tuesday night Chinese food night, and whatever we were doing. And that's how I thought of it. But what the person told me is, for your resume, that's all nice if you want to go work at the ADL. But if you want to send it to Wall Street, just take that exact experience and frame it a little bit differently.
Right. Show them how many events you planned.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't care what the underlying organization is as much as they care, well, what's the budget? How much autonomy do you guys have? Do you communicate with the administration? What's your title, right? So
Did you choose the name Boo?
no. Boo greatly preceded me. But the point is, if you look at that resume, the 3 bullets under Brandeis Orthodox Organization, president are, this was our budget. It was a $50,000 a year budget. That was like a big budget back then.
Yeah.
It's a big budget today. The fact that we had autonomy and the fact that the role entailed regular communication with administration and, university planning people and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just an example of how you can, take experiences and reframe them in a very honest and accurate way to speak the language, whoever it is that you're talking to.
Right. So could you take us through that interview and then landing the offer? And I think what you're a little bit describing is that imposter syndrome that some people have when they show up to that interview. They're not really they don't have a resume in terms of like the career that they want ahead of them, but they're kind of expected to not be an expert in the field, but really know a lot about it. Can you describe maybe showing up to the interview and then the summer itself?
Yeah, imposter syndrome is like an understatement.
Right.
I felt absurd walking in. I did skip one step. So before you get to a super day, it's like, how do you get to the super day, right? There were, in that binder, there are 23, in 2005, there were 23 fixed income summer analysts. 23 out of the whole country. I counted, half of them were from MIT and Penn, specifically Wharton. So that left it was 10 out of 23. So that left 13 spots in the whole country for the Credit Suisse 2005 fixed income analyst class. And there were thousands and thousands of applications. Luck plays a huge role, and anyone who sits in this chair and doesn't emphasize, luck and, in my opinion, God is just intellectually dishonest. Luck plays a huge role. As luck would have it at the time, in real estate finance and securitization at Credit Suisse, there was a managing director named Adam Raboy. I actually just bumped into Adam on the street. Ironically, he sits in the same building I do right now on 55th and Park. So I said hello to him the other day. But Adam Raboy, I don't know if he'll ever hear this one day, but he was like a pretty serious managing director in the group. He was known as like a real, tough guy. No nonsense, brass tacks type of guy. And he was a Brandeis alum. And so what the bank did especially when they got a resume from a far afield place like Brandeis University, they had an alum in fixed income vet that resume. So my resume evidently landed on the desk of Adam Raboy. This is where just luck and whatever comes in. And he set up a phone interview to determine whether I would be worthy of coming to the Super Day. I'll never forget. I remember exactly where my desk in my dorm room was. I made sure the door was locked, and I was, had a speakerphone ready and everything. And I dialed the number, and he picked up the phone, and he was like clearly busy and probably closing a large deal or 2 or 10 at the time. And he's like, "What's this about?" And I said, Adam, my name is Yoni Goodman. I'm a junior at Brandeis University. I'm calling you for our scheduled phone interview for the summer analyst class of 2005. And he said, "Well, what am I supposed to ask? What are we talking about?" Like that. Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about?
She's trying to get you rattled.
And I don't think he was trying to get me rattled. I think he was trying to close his deal. I think he had more important things to do.
Right.
And so I said to him, "Well, the process is that, I think I had you set up this call, and I'm happy to tell you about my background." Anyway, the call, I remember the call being fairly terse, but I felt like okay about it. And I got a call from HR the next day basically saying, "You've been selected for a Super Day." Now, the Super Day that year, and this is meant to be inspirational for anyone who's listening, because
Put this to music. Here we go.
Don't worry about long odds is the message. Just do it, right? It was a 30-person Super Day that day, and I think it was followed by 2 more 30-person Super Days. They had 6 offers to give that day, okay? The 30 people, I remember, they brought us into Credit Suisse. It was at 11 Madison Avenue. They brought us down to one of these floors below ground, a big conference center, and they sat us in a room, and we went around the room. They asked us to go around the room and say your name, your school, and your major. And going around the room, and it was like Wharton, MIT, Yale, Harvard, Wharton, MIT. And I think like there was one University of Chicago, which is an amazing school. And I was like relieved to hear it wasn't another Wharton kid. And then me, philosophy major. And I don't think people could keep a straight face when I said that, but that was what it was.
Who's laughing now?
And then we had like 8 interviews back to back to back. And one of my interviewers was a guy named Mark Silverstein, who's a close friend to this day. And he later told me that he was the person, when they collect themselves after the Super Day, he was the person that basically sponsored me and raised his hand and said, we got to hire this guy. And he told me that the conversation in the room that day was, this guy is a philosophy major at a liberal arts school, like intern for the ADL, intern for APAC before that, like maybe he'll come work here and leave after a year. Like he's not gonna end up being a Wall Street guy. And Mark said, no, I think he actually will. I think he will. And he stuck out his neck for me.
Wow.
And I have tremendous gratitude to him to this day for that. And he stuck out his neck, and I ended up actually being in his group. His direct boss was a guy named Rich Lerner, who texted me a few hours ago just to check in and see how I'm doing. So these are lifelong friends, but basically I got the shot. Then when we got to the group, Real Estate Finance and Securitization, summer started. I was amongst people that were like literally doing Excel work for their coursework, and and literally like guys who were studying amortization tables. I didn't know what an amortization table was. You can't be in real estate finance and not know what an amortization table is. And so it was a steep hill to climb, but it was a lot of interpersonal skills also. It was a lot of, and I think that, that Super Day, the tact I took was, I'm going to show that I've done my Stadlis, as they say. Like I'm going to show that I did the prep work that they wanted me to do, but I'm also going to I'm not going to hide from the fact that like I'm not like 90% of the other people in Super Day, because if I try to fake it, it'll be transparent and it won't be appreciated. And instead, I focused on, the ethos of hard work, and I'm willing to do anything, and I love learning and communication skills and all this stuff, and that worked, and it worked that summer too. So that summer, by the way, that summer was an amazing summer. I mean, in one of my first couple weeks, we got on the private plane of some, of a lender we were doing business with. I remember who the individual is, but I won't say his name now. But we got on his plane to go to a real estate portfolio.
As an intern.
As an intern.
That's unheard of.
As an intern. We were flying around the country. It was 6 nursing homes. We had to see them all in one day. So we got on his plane and we saw this.
So
and
cool.
it was like, that summer was magical. Hard work, really true 15, 16-hour days. But it was a magical summer. And I didn't know a ton and probably didn't add a ton of value, but I worked hard and developed real relationships. And at the end of the summer, I got a full-time offer. And, I would say even once, so senior year was great, right? Come back to campus, full-time offer. I actually graduated 6 months early, went to Israel and to Europe for a little bit. And then I started full-time. And incidentally, my wife and I had met between junior and senior year. So now we're 2 years into dating, time to get married. And so in retrospect, it's pretty poor planning on our part. We got married the first week I started at Credit Suisse.
Oh my gosh.
So I evidently that was our version of good planning. But the truth is, when else was it going to be? And so, and we'll come back to dating a little bit later, but and the importance of that, and in the end, it was the exact right priority. But when I started at Credit Suisse, I'll give you 2 little vignettes on the imposter syndrome and how daunting it was. I was working 15, 16-hour days. I was coming up the curve quickly. I would say the shame of the fact that Wall Street today is much more regimented in terms of a resume like mine wouldn't travel as far in the analyst process today. It's a shame because, I did the math at the time. It's like the most serious, real estate concentration at MIT or wherever. How many hours did they spend over 4 years on that, on amortization tables and Excel, and maybe 1,500 hours, 2,000 hours. In 6 months on Wall Street, you spend the same number of hours and you're doing it with a practical application. So, for me, it was hard to come up the curve. But I would say between 6 months and a year in, we were all on pretty equal footing, which is interesting,
Right.
right? And had someone told me that to start, it probably would have been a little bit less daunting.
Right.
And in fact, I would say a lot of the stuff you learn in a classroom is less applicable. So a lot of that was noise even. So maybe it took 3 or 4 months to, sort of comp the curve in the areas that mattered. But yeah, just two vignettes on the imposter syndrome and just how daunting it is. Just words of comfort for those out there. I distinctly remember, at 10, 11 o'clock at night was when the cleaning crew would come around, which is pretty late in retrospect, thinking about it. But I guess they didn't want to disturb bankers during the day. And we were all still at the office at the time, unfortunately. And I remember often, being just like drowning in, an investment committee memo that had to be written with a model that wasn't yet finished and stressing over this cash flow or how to underwrite this deal. And the associate had gone home for the night or whatever. And I remember the cleaning crew would come around. And I remember many times watching them take one of those small trash cans and put it in a big trash can. I remember thinking to myself, boy, that job is simple. And like, I wish I had a simple job like that, right? And it's like, it just shows you, it just shows you how the shoe's on the other foot. It's like, here you are, supposedly, some fancy banker at a big investment bank in the primary.
Right.
And you just want to be the chat. Oh my God.
I was like, I would look at them and be like, wow.
I've never related to something more in my life.
Do you think that's because
same thing.
Do you think that's because when you're going through it, and I know you had a summer in banking and you've had a career doing this type of work. Is it that level of like, why do I have to be this level of ambitious? And why can't it just be simple? Like you're saying, why can't it just be like I don't have to roll up my sleeve and.
Let me add to that. Also, so many people, when there's like a study, they go to the people in their hospital beds. They say, what are your biggest regrets? And number one on the list was, I wish I had worked less. I wish I didn't work as hard. So how do you balance knowing that and knowing you have one life and how important relationships are with the fact that you're so ambitious and you want to succeed, and that really is delayed gratification also. So how do you balance that?
That's a heavy question. I'll try to attack it. First of all, for me, it wasn't, I had no morsel of regret at the level of ambition I had. For me, it was just like in the moment.
Right.
When you're stressing over, first of all, you're full of unhealthy food because you just ordered a turkey burger and fries from Mr. Broadway, and then you got like wings for the entire group. By the way, the entire group I was in real estate finance and securitization at Credit Suisse, ate strictly kosher for the 3 years I was an analyst because I was ordering dinner every night, and they wanted sushi and this and that. And I would order the sushi for the group, and then I would order the Mr. Broadway for the group. And eventually,
like, why is the tab so expensive?
And eventually, they would smell my food. And after like 6 months, it reverted to just my order.
Right.
But anyway, for me, it was just in the moment of under a pile of work with no end in sight and wanting to go home to my wife and everything. Just in that moment, seeing the person. And it's like the Gemara actually talks about in a totally different context. About the perils of going into business, because business, is complex and you're always negotiating with somebody, and the temptation to lie or tip the scales or this, that, versus a cobbler. Cobbler lays stone. They get paid for laying stone. You see your stone and you pay the cobbler, right? So, but in any event, I think it was just the stress relative to that person was probably talking on the phone as they did it and whatnot.
Right.
The second story I have, and I remember thinking this all the time, and my analyst friends and I would talk about it. In the first year, I distinctly remember the dread of you get to the desk, and it doesn't matter if you're a real estate concentration at MIT or you're a philosophy major. The day you get to that desk, I just remember feeling a distinct feeling of, all right, I'm a liability. Like, I'm here. They're trusting me with all this work and all this modeling and taking deals to credit and doing site visits, and like, this is like real stuff because it's Wall Street. They trust analysts to do real things on Wall Street. And I remember thinking, I know I can screw this up. I don't know I can do it right. And even if I do it right, nobody claps when the trains run on time, right? So a train can run late. Nobody claps when the trains run. So I remember just thinking, like, I can't believe these people are trusting us. Like, we're just a bunch of liabilities. Like all we
Right.
can do, like
Right.
we have so much more downside than upside. And then gradually I realized that no, that's like the building block of a workforce is, the junior people and
Right.
junior people. And by the way, there's no better way to create a great, senior person than, just the hard work in the early years.
Right.
But while we talk about hard work, I just want to transition to that for a minute. I would say the single most important thing for people today, and I think this was true for time immemorial, is, as I look back on my 20-something year career at this point, you got to work hard. Like there's no silver bullet. There's no cheat code. There's no, like, you got to work hard.
And it's just that simple.
You got to put in
Right.
the time, and and you can cut corners here and there on the learning, I guess, like, but the truth is, and this is true all over planet Earth. It's like, if you're gonna smoke a meat, right, and it's a meat that you want to smoke and smoke it for 21 hours, you can't pump in triple the smoke and smoke it in 7 hours. It just doesn't come out the same, right? And same thing with baking a cake. You can't crank up the oven to 800 and cook it in half the time. You just can't do that.
Right.
And people don't want to hear that. And it's not a younger generation thing. People my age didn't want to hear it back then. People your age don't want to hear it now. People don't want to hear that. Nobody wants to see the dirty dishes in the sink. Everyone wants the cake. Everyone wants the cake. Everyone wants a beautiful cake, and they want to cut into the cake and eat the cake and enjoy the cake. But nobody wants to see what the kitchen looks like out back. And I think that one of the toughest things for people to hear, but it's true, is like, there is just no substitute for hard work, and some things just take time. No matter how good of an idea you have or how talented you are, you can't substitute time. I'll make a famous Warren Buffett line audience appropriate and just say, he talks about how you can't have 9 wives and make a baby in a month. You just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
He says it a little bit differently. I edited that. But the point is, like,
Right.
it takes 9 months.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Gestation period is 9 months.
Right.
So I would say hard work. And I think that there are a couple of offshoots to that, which is everything that you want. It generally is true that there's a negative correlation between the things you naturally are comforted by and the things that'll be good for you in the long run. So like comfort, fast results, like those are great in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but you're basically robbing yourself of the long-term benefit.
Right.
I remember when I worked at Goldman, when we lived in Riverdale, we had a young family, and I was working at Goldman, and I would drive to work every day, straight shot down the West Side Highway, and I would park in Battery Park City and walk into the building. And I remember one day it was raining, and I stepped into a puddle, and I realized I must have had a hole in the bottom of my leather shoe because my sock was like immediately wet. And I looked down, and there was a hole I had like worn through the bottom of my leather shoes. And I remember thinking, like, this is crazy. Like I'm a VP at Goldman coming to work, and I have like a big deal going on, and like I'm covering all these big clients, and like my socks are wet. Like, how is that possible? And I'll tell you guys a secret that I guess a bunch of people will hear. I love the concept of having a hole in your shoe, because the truth is, it is much more comfortable to not have a hole in your shoe and like feel the ground and like have wet socks. Like those aren't like comfortable things. But the truth is that there's no progress inhibitor in my mind that's greater than comfort. And so you got to get a little bit uncomfortable. And in my closet right now, I have like 1 or 2 pairs of shoes with holes, and I will not fix them. And like I have plenty of comfortable shoes too, but like I keep those, and that's the truth of the matter, is that you need to be uncomfortable. It's like building muscle. Like there's only one way to build muscle. You need to like tear the muscle fibers. You need to lift to the point of exhaustion and just tear those muscle fibers, and then you build the muscle.
Okay, I like that.
That's amazing.
I like that night technique. We're gonna do a little whole shoe cutting. So then,
Well, I want to ask on that point. People always say, do what you love, right? They say, if you really hate something, don't do it. Your life's too short, right? So how do you balance the fact that obviously you want to work hard and work hard on something you love, but let's say, would you say automatically you should recommend sucking it up for 2 years, putting in time in something you really dislike, even if, is that the real way to gain success? Or can you also find something you love and put your time into that?
So I would say I think that a lot of people who ask that question confuse doing something that they don't like with not liking what it takes to do something that they do like. So, I would tell you, if you don't like something, don't do it, because ultimately you put so much effort and so many hours and so much sweat and blood into your career. So don't do something you don't love. But if you think that you can have a career in something you love without ever doing something you don't love, you're going to be sorely disappointed in any field. So like you can't want to be the world's best orthopedic surgeon and then be complaining to everybody during your like residency years that like you hate what you do and you can't believe you have to do it. Like if you want to be the world's best orthopedic surgeon or the world's best investment banker or run a company one day, just understand that you're going to do scut work along the way. And so I would tell you, be goal-oriented and ask yourself, not do I love what I'm doing this year or this hour or this minute, but am I doing things that whether I like them or not are putting me on the path to something I really will love doing? And I think that that's a hard answer, but it's the right answer. I have not come across a successful person in any field that can look at me and say, I love the whole way up. Like, and I'm sitting here and I'm telling you guys, this is not going to be like very popular. The way up is painful. The way up has unbelievably rewarding moments, unbelievably rewarding. And we'll talk about some of them. But it is painful. It's late nights, it's long hours, it's stress. And I think that's true of most good things in life.
Yeah.
Like you think when you see a couple in their 60s holding hands walking on the boardwalk in Bal Harbor, you think it was easy to get there? And nobody wants to hear it. But do you think it was easy to get there? You think it was easy to find each other? Easy to build a family, to raise children while they were in the primes of their careers, to do all the work, to deal with kid issues and then teenage kid issues and then adult child issues and all this stuff. Like, do you think it was easy? It wasn't easy. But if they're holding hands, they stuck to it, they persevered, they had grit, and now they're walking on the beach in Bal Harbor. And you see the baked cake. And you're like, I want a piece of that. Like, I want a piece of that.
Right.
Like, look at his shoes and look at her outfit and they're holding hands and it's like, okay, you can have a piece of that, but you're not going to like every single step along the way.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Let's talk about some of those high points in your career, and obviously that'll culminate in your role at Meridian. So talk about that and how you got there.
Yeah, look, there were a lot of great moments along the way that I cherish. The day you cover your first client on your own, the day you close your first deal on your own, or where you're the primary person, the day you get a job at Goldman Sachs, the day you become the president of Meridian, whatever it is, the day you recruit your first big brokerage team, the day you do your first M&A, those were great. I would say there are a few things though, like with 2020 hindsight, as I continue to exhale from the 10 years of Meridian, there are a few things that definitely stand out career-wise. I would say one of the most poetic and unbelievable moments, away from any material, wins along the way. Like, I don't think that's your question. I think it's like moments of real gratitude, and real, feeling of accomplishment. So my first boss at Credit Suisse was a managing director. At the time, he was, and still is, total stud, amazing guy, thought differently, always lent on different types of asset classes than were regular. Deals were always the most profitable. He's an amazing guy, an amazing friend of mine. A few years ago, I was sitting at my desk and he and I were talking, and he mentioned to me that he and his partner were thinking about selling their business. And it was a very attractive business. It was a business that we wanted to get into at the time. And he said, yeah, we're thinking of selling it. We're talking to this person, that person. And I said to him, well, we're looking for that kind of business. And he said, oh, okay, interesting. And to his credit, from many years ago, he started thinking of me as like a real person. I wasn't, the analyst from Brandeis anymore. And we started talking and it became evident to both of us that there could be a deal here. Now you have to understand, there's almost never a deal anywhere, right? The chances of any deal consummating on Wall Street, whether it's an IPO, M&A, tuck under acquisition, whatever, it's like dating. There's gonna, it's like a 1 in a million, right? That any deal will ever consummate. But it's no, this kind of makes sense. And by the way, we have a real relationship. We've known each other for almost 20 years. We started talking more, and again, it became evident that there could be a deal. And skipping over a lot of, the dance that we did over a several year period, we ended up closing the deal. And it basically involved me in my position at one company acquiring his company and him and his partner's company. And I remember, it didn't hit me until the day of closing. But the day it closed, I was like, this is crazy. I started my career in 2004, 2005. And at this time, it was 2022, I think. And it's this is full circle. This guy was this immortal senior, and still is an immortal senior, unbelievable, mentor of mine. And I just had the privilege of acquiring him and his partner's company. And it was hard to process,
right?
That it was hard to process on every level. You get to a point in your career where you have relationships where you're sourcing M&A opportunities as a principal. You get to a point in your career where your first boss actually thinks of you as a respectable human that he can do business with, right? And so that was one really incredible moment. Another is, I'll call it a category of moments that happen all the time, thankfully, which is, I bump into so many past colleagues and their spouses, sometimes even their children, and I bump into them, and we talk about the years working together, and in a lot of cases, the person's spouse will come to me and thank me for changing their spouse's life or helping to change their life, give them a certain opportunity, grow their team in a certain way, convince them not to leave the company when they could have left the company, and their best years, lo and behold, were still at the company. And those moments, you can't put a price on those moments. You can't. There's no payday. And don't get me wrong, paydays are great, but there's no payday that strikes at least my chords, like those conversations, because you realize that, business is business and a cash flow is a cash flow, but these are people. These are people who have spouses and children, and if you have the privilege of being able to affect someone's life in any respect, let alone in a material respect, there's no feeling like that. So I would say those are among the more meaningful moments.
Wow. And you mentioned the trip just to bring it back, you mentioned the trip to Argentina, you mentioned the special times in Moshe Vayo, and you mentioned that you have a specific take when it comes to dating that you'd like to share or to impart. Is there a way in which you want to take this and sort of
sure.
just go straight on?
So yeah, I'm not gonna mince words. So there's actually a podcast that changed my life. It's a podcast that Bill Perkins did with someone named Peter Attia. Peter Attia he wrote the book Outlive. He's one of these longevity exercise, how to really optimize your health. And Bill Perkins was on his podcast, and Bill Perkins had just written a book called Die with Zero. And Die with Zero covers a lot of topics. It covers, how people are much better at making money than actually spending and enjoying their money, and a bunch of stuff that's not relevant to this conversation. But one of the things that Bill Perkins formulates in that book and that he described in the podcast relate to your question and changed my life forever. And the framework he has is that there are different seasons of life. And so it's not always clear cut. It's not like these 4 years here, but there are different seasons of life. You You have your growing up years, right? Your growing up years, for some people, those include college. For some people, they're like fully mature when they're 19, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then you have college years. You have your years in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. Then you have, you have sort of your child rearing years, then you have your retirement year. Like there are seasons of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those seasons can apply to everything. So they can apply to your career, they can apply to your children, to your parents, to your spouse, to yourself. And the formulation that he has that reframed the way I think about life completely is that there are certain things in life that translate very well season to season. So just as an example, if Ben and Hillel, if you guys want to like play cards with each other, you could have done that when you were 10. You can do it today. You can do it when you're 80 years old. You can like sit in like the Boca Raton clubhouse and play cards.
Or on the Washington Heights streets.
Or the Washington Heights
Both
streets.
work.
Yeah. There are other things in life that absolutely just biologically don't translate. Like you cannot choose to have a child, if you're a woman, certainly, when you're 80 years old. You cannot choose to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I just got an email from my cousin, shout out Meira Dem, Meira and Richard, close cousins of mine. She just sent an email. She's turning 50. She's going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and proceeds are going to go to Shalva, to an amazing cause. And like she can do that, God willing. You cannot do that when you're 90. You can't do it. It doesn't translate. And then you have a third category of things that can translate, but likely won't translate well. So like I have, thank God, 4 beautiful children, and they range from 5 to 14. And like I can push my 5-year-old on the swings, right? He loves it. Judah is an avid swing person.
He gets up. He's not going low. He's going all the way back.
My daughter, who's 14, and the one who's 11, like my daughter just started Frisch, an amazing school. I could push her on a swing.
Oh, that's social suicide. She's done.
She wouldn't enjoy it. She wouldn't enjoy it very much, right? So you have these different categories of things. Some that translate super well.
Yeah.
It is awesome to sit playing cards with your friends at 10 and at 80. And you have things that don't translate at all. And then you have things that translate. I actually think the most insidious, the thing that trips people up the most is that third category, where things that technically can translate, but it just won't translate well. So you ask about dating. To me, you hear a lot of different theories on this. Like I'm going to, when I'm 22, I'm just going to focus on my career and I'm going to go hard for 4 years, and then I'm going to get serious about dating when I'm 28 and I'm going to be married by 29 and a half. Like you can have that mentality, but I would posit that dating is one of those things that seems like maybe it can translate. Like I can date very well when I'm 20 or 30, but I would argue it doesn't translate as well as you might want it to translate. And so for me, the answer to your question is simple, which is if you recognize this framework, you realize you need to date very urgently, in my opinion. And it's a bit of a brass tacks like message, but when you're 20 years old in YU, you should be very, very serious about the things. Like if there's any season of your life that's about to pass you forever, and by the way, there are things you will not be able to do later, well, do them, right? And then if there are things that translate super well, like defer them. And this category that kind of might or might not, you got to focus on them. You got to focus on them. And Bill Perkins' example, and he's not in this same community we're talking about, but his example was he decided to forego an opportunity to go backpacking with his friends when they were young and had almost no money. And his friend decided to go, and he decided not to go. And he said, I'm not going to go. I'm just starting a sales and trading job. Like, you're going to go for 6 months. You're crazy. Like, in 6 months from now, you're going to get back, and I'm going to be, like, super advanced in my career, and you're going to... And the guy got back, and he got back with, like, the richest stories and a richness of experience. And Bill Perkins says, like, he was 6 months later in his sales and trade, like, he could have gone. Mm-hmm. And he talks about the fact that translates. Like, he could go when he's 50, but when he's 50, he's going to want to stay in, like, bougie hotels. And, the experience of backpacking, sleeping in youth hostels, and meeting someone in a bar and, like, getting lost and all this stuff. You just don't do that when you're doing it on a budget and like you need to stay in a nice hotel, right? So to me, dating is way more serious than that example. Dating, you know, when you're your guy's age, right? Like now's the time. Like figure it out. And frankly, you know, I think your 20s and 30s are all about meeting in this order, meeting the right person, and then the right time starting a family and developing your career. Those are the important things. Everything else, like all the other stuff you love to do, like hanging out with your friends and like playing cards, smoking cigars, taking a trip to AC, like steal time from that, right? Like time is finite. So, you know, for me, at my point in my career, you know, there's a whole separate story, but through my time at Meridian, I was working so hard, I like completely physically let myself go. I gained a ton of weight. I was stressed. I was eating at Reserve Cut like 8 times a week and never working out and stressed out of my mind. I gained a lot of weight, okay? And I, you know, all the attendant, you know, blood indicators and whatever. And it's like when I finally realized, okay, I got to take this seriously, and I'll tell you how that happened. I knew I would have to either steal time from my family, from my sleep, or from my work. Or I guess from, you know, the boards I sit on or whatever. But those don't take up a lot of time. And I said, okay, I'm going to make time out of my work time because I don't sleep as it is. And I don't spend enough time with my family as it is. It's got to come out of work. So too with this, it's like figure out a way to date, prioritize it. Now's the time.
Right.
If you think you're going to defer it till you're 28, I'll give you a snapshot when you're 28. When you're 28, you'll be 5 years into your career, 6 years into your career, be stressed out of your mind, and you'll be at a point where every action you take is going to have massive consequences to the positive, meaning you'll be at a really intense part of your career. Like you think that's the right time to like say, okay, I'm going to buckle down and start dating. Like it's just not. So I would focus on it right away. And it's the single most important decision you'll ever make. And when you think about it like that, you start to get really serious. Like I promise you both, I promise you, and anybody will tell you this, it is the single most important decision you'll ever make. Way more important than where you went to yeshiva, where you went to college, what first job you take, what second, what third job you take. Like, this is your life partner.
Right.
And it's going to impact every iota of your life, every little element of your life. So, like, you got to get it right to the best of your ability. And I also think that when you're in your early 20s and you have time, like if you guys think you're busy now, you're not busy. I don't even know what I was doing in college. I have no idea. I knew I had like 2 classes, 3 classes a day. You know, maybe with the base measure, you guys have 5 classes a day, 6 classes. And I had some work, but like, I don't even know how we spent our time. We had that much time. Now's the time. Your mind is a little bit more free, you know.
Right, but if someone were to refute their point, just to play devil's advocate, even though I actually agree with that assessment, that you're not as developed, you don't know exactly what you want yet. College is more the time to think on your own and to process, and you haven't fully developed into the person that you want to be. You're kind of gonna pick someone that you might not end up seeing the world very similarly to.
It's a good point, and it's a good segue to the other side of the coin, which is that I think there is such thing as too young, right? Like when you're 17, 18 years old, again, some people meet their high school sweetheart and, you know, have great success with that, and that's fine, and that's great. But I do agree, like, you know, for my own children, right? When they're 17, 18 years old, I'm going to tell them to chill. Like, don't take yourself so seriously, and don't think that you're, you know, first senior year, you know, girlfriend or boyfriend.
You're coming to the prom with a ring. That ain't happening.
No. There is too young, no question. And sometime in those 4 years of college, or 5 years of yeshiva in college, or 6 years of yeshiva in college, whatever it is, sometime, your point is right, but it's like sometime in that time is the right time to get serious about it. And the truth is, if you're honest with yourself, you know, you may not know what community you want to live in. You may not know exactly how your career is going to go. You might not, but like, you are who you are. You have your values.
Right.
You know what you're looking for. And if you don't, spending time asking yourself that question when you're 20 in the middle of YU or 21 in the middle, that's a good use of time. Like, to me, you are starting to date because you're asking yourself the right questions to prepare yourself to date, right? So that counts.
Right.
And kind of while we're wrapping up, if you would go back and talk to, you know, yourself at Credit Suisse or yourself at Brandeis, and you would say, you know, make sure you do those things. Make sure if these are some regrets I have, make sure you stress these things. What would you tell yourself?
Ooh, I'm like a big time optimist by my nature, so I'm gonna reframe the question a little because I don't have many regrets. I don't have many regrets as they are, and if I do, I don't focus on the regrets. I optimize for the future. But I would say I almost made a few big career mistakes, and those are as instructive as any regret would be, which is, especially in today's day and age where everything moves so quickly, right? Everything moves so quickly, way quicker than when I was starting, and probably slower than what will be in 20 years, but it moved. It's like Trump says something, to someone in the press on Air Force One, and within 3 seconds, it's broadcast all over the world, right? Company releases earnings, and within 3 seconds, it's all over. It moves so much. When I was at Credit Suisse, every year, so like pay on Wall Street is a big deal, right? What day do you get paid, right? Everyone knows what that means. It's bonus day, whatever. So this is an actual true story. There was a magazine in the early 2000s called Investment Dealer's Digest. That magazine was the Bible for what investment banking bonuses were in any given year. And like in February, March of every year after bonuses had been given out at all the firms, because some gave it out in December, January, February, by March, everyone was in. They did their survey, they published it, okay? First of all, it was a very manual process. And second of all, when I say they published it, they physically published the magazine. So Credit Suisse, so like you couldn't go online and see it. Like it was a paid for print only subscription. And Credit Suisse had a library at the time, a physical library. Like that's where the publications were. Mm-hmm. And every year my job was to go up to the Credit Suisse library and photocopy the banker survey comp page. And so things move so fast these days. But what I would say is the biggest almost regrets were moving around in my career too quickly. So there were a few times when I almost left wherever I was, and at those times I was counseled to stay, right? And that was the right decision. Like that was the right decision in every single case. And these were weighty cases. I'll give you one quick example. When I was at Goldman, I had just gotten to Goldman. I was a year in. Thank God it was going great. And I was starting to cover clients for the first time. I was in my late 20s, already covering clients and doing deals. And Credit Suisse called. And in 2008, Credit Suisse shut down the real estate financing group. But now it's 2011. They were back. They were growing. They were actually one of the heads of real estate finance at Goldman was now running Credit Suisse. And they made me an offer that was 2.5 times total comp that I had just been paid in my first year at Goldman. 2.5 times. And I'll never forget when they communicated that to me. I was holding my newborn baby in the lobby of our building. And, it was like the future was literally in my hands. And I was not expecting like that level of offer. And it was almost like it would be like irrational and irresponsible to your family not to take that. I went upstairs, I spoke to my wife about it, and just one of 1,000 examples of like how important it is to find the right partner. And it took a while, but we sort of concluded, and I spoke to a lot of mentors, and it was like, 2.5 times is a lot, but like go talk to Goldman, tell them what the bid away is, they'll increase comp for the next year, you'll figure it out. Like there's no bedrock of a career like being at Goldman Sachs. And so I ended up staying. And this is an extreme example, and it's totally wild. 6 months later, in its first year of its new incarnation, the real estate finance and securitization group at Credit Suisse shut down.
Holy cow.
Okay? And this is in early 2012. No group shut down in early 2000. Like, to this day, it was probably the only group that opened and then promptly closed.
That's bizarre.
Early in this cycle.
Right.
This cycle
can survive without Yoni Goodman.
Yeah, right. They shut down.
Wow.
Like you can Google it. And I think back to that, and it's like, if I had done that, I think I might have gotten one bonus there maybe, but like my whole career would have been thrown off. Likewise, in my later years at Meridian, I was tired, I was stressed. And, a few years before I left, I was like deeply contemplating leaving. And a close friend of mine. We sat down at Starbucks on North Avenue in New Rochelle, and he basically talked me out of it. He said, "Listen, you gotta stay the course. You gotta stay." And lo and behold, those were like by far the most rewarding years, right? So I would say, looking back, it's a fast-moving world. A healthy career has some handful of moves, right? It's not jumping around every 2 years. And so if it has a handful of moves, you got to make them count. And I would say when I think back, those were like, oof, those were close. Those were like close calls.
That's amazing. Okay, briefly before we close, because we were speaking a little bit off air about the 5 Fs, and I want to see if Hillel, I'm going to put him on the spot right now, can name them, because he got them pretty well. And they're all manifested in the background of your phone, which is a picture of your family in front of the cocktail. There, I gave away one. But Hillel, let's see if you can get it.
Last night I was out sweating. About to go to sleep, studying for my 2 tests today. And I was like, what could these Fs possibly be? So obviously family.
Just for background for everyone, I had told you guys that to stay focused, my lock screen on my phone has some data that Apple allows you to have 2 widgets.
Right.
And it has a picture. And those things encompass the 5 Fs. Go ahead.
Here we go. So family's natural, faith, obviously, okay? Then we get into, obviously, your finance background. You saw the S&P on there, so finance, number 3. Number 4, we had a little health tracker, good heart rate, fitness, obviously. Are you training for anything? What is your fitness?
Are you planning on joining the trip to Kilimanjaro with your cousin?
Training for something huge.
Which is what?
Life, baby.
Okay, there we go. There we go. The
Just
open book
training for
test.
life.
The opening book test.
I thought we had an Ironman coming up.
No. I'll be happy to wake up in the morning.
Hillel, what's number 5?
And then number 5 got difficult. Definitely got difficult. But
It got difficult because you only submitted 4.
yeah,
That's
I gave up on the 5th. And listen, hey, I trust my teammate. I passed you the ball, swing the rock, and number 5 was fun. So
That's it.
There we go. There we go. Those are the 5 Fs to stay grounded. Yoni, we like to ask this question to every guest, which is, what is one specific skill, experience, or story that you've learned from that's specific to your career in real estate that could be applied to all types of careers, physician, lawyer, everything, maybe something specific to real estate that you think could apply?
Sure. I mean, I think the thing it sort of ties together a lot of what we've spoken about, hard work and stick-to-itiveness and all that. But not getting too comfortable is the concept of grit. And grit is written about a lot. And, I recently saw an interview with Barbara Corcoran. She said on Shark Tank she will not invest in any company with a founder that comes from means, right?
Right.
Because her theory is that they can't have grit. I'm not sure I'd be that. I'm not sure I'd be
She's
that tough.
Haredi over there.
By the way, nor can you penalize a person who
Right.
comes from a background of means. But I think that the concept of grit. I think that to have sort of a good career is something you can do. A lot of people can do that. I think if you want to really differentiate yourself, you have to be ready to do impossible things. And that's sort of what I think about. Like in looking back, there are things that occurred that are not possible to have occurred. Like you can't show up at CS with zero background and have a successful career on Wall Street. You can't join a company that has never been in a certain business line and create that business line and create this partnership and buy this company. Those were like impossibilities, like looking back. But the reality is that what seems impossible is not at all impossible. And you just have to be ready to do impossible things. If you're the type of person that just gets daunted by doing things that are really seemingly impossible, it's very hard to be successful. So you sort of have to stare it in the eyes and say, I understand that accomplishing this thing, whatever it is impossible. I'm just going to do it. So
It's amazing.
And
keeping the grit to get it done.
love that. And lastly, as a Jewish professional in the workplace, what are the final takeaways you want to leave our audience with?
As a Jewish professional, I would say that with all that's written about, the climate, anti-Semitism, bias, this, that, I think it's all overblown, especially here in America. I'm not speaking for, I would not want to be walking down the Champs-Élysées in a yarmulke right now. But here in America, and I'm a huge America bull, and the whole sky is falling. I don't want to hear about Mamdani or China or America's gonna go bankrupt. We live in the greatest economy that's ever been created. A $30 trillion GDP. AI is just getting started. Mamdani will come and go. All this stuff, so I'm a perma bull, okay? And I would tell you that as a Jew in the workplace, forgetting all the bias, I don't buy into any of that. I'm sure it exists. I know it exists. I've encountered it. Ignore it. By and large, here's the advice. By and large, people are a mirror. So if you don't respect your own religious beliefs, and you're always sneaking around and worried about ordering kosher or putting on your yarmulke when you walk out of the building, or telling them you have to be out for yontif, whatever. If you sort of yourself doubt that and don't feel great about that, they won't feel great about it. But if you embrace it, and it's this is like the most important thing in the world to me, it'll actually be the most important thing in the world to them. And I've gotten much more grief in my career when I hedge and pussyfoot and, sort of walk on eggshells than when I lead with it. People respond unbelievably. It's like, wow, that's amazing. Tell me more about it. And by the way, aren't you supposed to be out of here? Sundown is early today. And so don't run away from it. They'll respect you the more you respect yourself.
Yoni, thank you so much.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You want to give it.
Sorry, it's been a
season
second.
2, and
it's been
you're
a second
forgetting
for
to
season
shout
2.
out our
I got to
team.
shout out the team, JB, Ashley, of course, and Josh, who is in Florida right now.
Josh is out signing sports players. To
Okay,
contracts. That's
stay
what he
tuned, Josh. We're gonna need you to, you know what I'm saying with this podcast, publicize. Maybe we can bring some of those new Jewish professionals on the Brooklyn Nets, the Jews on the team, to the studio. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.